What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the art studio. Thank you so much for joining us. So today we're going to be doing just a little quick impromptu video on how to clean your art palette in the most efficient way possible. If you're working with acrylics or oils, it's actually quite different if you're actually working with oils and acrylics. Pretty much with acrylics, all you're going to have to do is just scrape the excess paint off of your palette and just kind of wash it off with water or some type of other medium that might, help the acrylic paint get off of the palette faster, because with acrylic paint it's going to dry really fast onto the palette. A lot of people like to use paper palettes, but for oil paint palettes, it's real important just to kind of clean that palette so that the next time that you put oil paint back onto the palette, it's not going to, you're not going to mess up your new colors. You're not going to intermix the different colors. Hopefully you won't have, other color residue left over from the previous session. So I'm just going to show you guys my portrait that my palette rather, that we've been working on. Portrait and palette. This is the new portrait that we've been working on. Just sort of a little quick alla prima study, but I want to show you guys the portrait, the palette, I'm sorry, in relation to the portrait, so you guys can kind of see what we're going to be working with here. I'll just kind of hold it up like this. Just kind of a lot of flesh tone colors. That's pretty much all we're working with. But I want to show you guys briefly how to just clean the palette really efficiently, really quickly. You will need a palette knife if you're cleaning, oil paints off of a palette. I might actually switch to a glass palette because I've actually heard some really good things about the glass palette, but I also like these old-fashioned wooden palettes too. It's kind of like the old master type thing. So let's just do a little cut scene here, and I'll show you guys how to clean this palette in the most efficient way possible. So here's our palette. It's pretty messy. Some of the paint is actually starting to dry. So it's real important that we're going to go in with a palette knife just like this. This palette knife is pretty sharp. It's actually not as ideal as like a rounded palette knife. I think next time I'll get like a more rounded palette knife. But this will be fine for now. So we're just going to kind of start gently, just kind of scraping up the paint. And you'll see it like that. And some of this might be wasted paint. Ideally, you could maybe save some of this paint. But I think for this, most of these colors are fairly, used up for the most part. I don't really have any further use for them until we, carry on with this portrait here. Looks like I got some wet paint here. So this is just kind of like the first step. Just kind of get that palette knife and just you're not going to sit here scraping the palette forever. But it's important just to get the real thick layers of paint off, so you can kind of follow suit and just kind of get all that up. Just a little rag like that'll do. That's fine. Nothing too complicated. And then we're actually going to need some paper towels. So let me go run and grab some. I think we're actually going to empty. This is like really, really dirty, old, used up paint thinner, and we're just going to take our rag and just kind of go like that. Just so that's nice and clean. Paint thinner is really, I'm using this Mona Lisa brand or Speedball brand, Speedball, Mona Lisa brand, whatever. And this is pretty much the most efficient way to do it. You don't have to do it like this. Let me just make sure this is in the shot. Okay, it is. Just a little bit goes a long way. You don't really need a whole lot. You can start the process by picking up a nice big brush and just kind of wetting the palette with the brush, or you can kind of pour the the mineral spirits onto the palette. But what I like to do is I just like to take a nice little section of paper towels and just kind of dip it right into the mineral spirits, just like so. And you can actually do this with walnut oil or linseed oil. You don't have to use solvents. But I like to use solvents at this point. I just like the effect that you get on the underlying layers of the canvas. But it is extremely unhealthy, so I would definitely advise you to be sparing with the solvents. But that's the beautiful thing about solvents, is you can use them as a paint thinner, you can use them as a brush cleaner, you can use them as and see how that just totally takes all the paint off. But it actually leaves a residue of it's just a muddy mess of color. So you're going to want to come in here with a clean slate of paper towels and just kind of get in here. Hold it down nice and firm. My table's kind of wobbly, unfortunately. just kind of, and what you're actually doing here also is you're kind of toning your canvas a little bit. But see how we're rubbing that yellow ochre all around, and we've got some darker colors here. I'm actually going to go grab some more paper towels, fresh paper towels right here, like so. So we do have a little bit of excess paint here that I don't want on there. So just kind of wipe that off like that, but you can see how many different colors are actually still stuck on the palette. A little bit more paint thinner. Get this out of the way here. I would advise holding it down with a paper towel like that so you don't actually touch the solvent. But you see a lot of oil painters, man, and they're sitting there with surgical gloves on, like they're about ready to cut out somebody's appendix or something. Like it just looks like they're afraid of the equipment that they're using. They're afraid of the oil paints. They're afraid of the solvents. They're afraid of the painting mediums. And I think that takes a lot of the joy and the creativity out of it, man. If you're sitting there with surgical gloves, if you're sitting there with plastical surgical gloves, it's like, why are you painting with oils in the first place? Like, I got love for them. Sorry, I dropped this down here. I'm not trying to talk bad about them, and I know that a lot of the equipment that oil painters use is very, very toxic. But if you're so afraid to touch it that you got to use surgical gloves, I just think that's completely ridiculous. But do whatever works for you. But this is part of like the whole process for me. I like to feel everything. I like to get my hands wet. It's like playing in the dirt. You wouldn't wear a spacesuit when you're playing in the dirt when you're a kid. It's the same thing with oil paint. So now we have a completely clean palette. Tomorrow I might actually oil the palette out a little bit, just kind of touch it up, make sure all the oil is off of there, make sure all the paint thinner is all off of there. This palette is so old, as you can see. Well, it's only maybe a couple years old, but it's very, very worn. It's got some really thick layers of underlying paint there. But this is just kind of how I clean my palette. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next video.